Happy Halloween, and welcome to another horror movie ranking. Today I'll be ranking the Scream movies, and I know there's only four at this time, so I'll be including my ranking for the TV series on top of it. So I want to start by warning you, there will be spoilers ahead, so if you have not watched this franchise, please turn the video off, watch it for yourself, then come back and see if you like the movies in the same way I do. With that said, let's get on with the ranking. So number 5, I want to start by putting the Scream MTV series at the bottom. It basically tried to just do the regular generic horror thing. They completely changed the mask, which I was not a big fan of. I only could sit through one season of it, and since then I've had no desire to watch any more. They play around with, who could the killer be? And in this franchise, they really, I think, a lot of the times just say, okay, this person's the killer. This is why. Even if the doesn't quite make a lot of sense. Even if the people have an issue with it, they just kind of chuck it on and say, oh, that's the killer, that's why. And I think the Scream TV series just didn't quite have what the movies had. Not to mention it was made by MTV, which I'm not really a big fan of MTV shows. For a long time, it kind of became more RTV, in my opinion, reality TV, because all they ever showed on that channel was all these reality shows. I really begin to wonder why it still calls itself MTV. From what I've heard, now I don't have cable, I haven't had cable in 10 years or more, but I know people who do have cable, and I know MTV is still around. But I really am baffled as to why it's called MTV when you never see music videos, which was the entire reason it was called MTV. Basically, it just does not make sense. And they didn't do a fantastic job at the TV series. I mean, it was okay. It just didn't hold my interest. And I think I've seen it on Netflix or Hulu, and I might check it out eventually in its entirety. But I honestly can't even remember any of the plot lines, any of who did what. I think that the formula they were using, from what I saw, was very reminiscent of most, I want to call them dramas. Things like Pretty Little Liars, Desperate Housewives, a very almost G-like or PG-like horror. So that's why this is at the bottom. And probably my least favorite. Moving on. Number 4, Scream 3. Now, I actually, from this point on, really do like the rest of the Scream movies. In fact, the movies, in my opinion, are really good. But Scream 3 just kind of came in at the bottom. The reason why is because of the fact it felt a little forced with who the killer was, turning out to be this director who we see get killed off earlier in the film. This again plays into what I said with they kind of just do this person's the killer, this is why. And in this movie, it's probably most relevant here because we saw him get killed off, or we saw him dead. I shouldn't say we saw him get killed. We just saw him dead. And it's like, did he have time to do that? So with that and everything else, and they really try to hammer home it could be this person, it could be that person. And then they don't give you enough time to go, could it be that person? For instance, there's one scene where they make it seem like maybe the killer is this bodyguard, but then they immediately dismiss it, or they say maybe it could be this person. And then before they've even confronted her, that same person's being attacked, which at this point in the game, you're like, okay, just because that person's attacked, they weren't killed off, doesn't mean much. So that's why it's at number 4. Number 3, Scream 2. Now, this might be higher for some people, mainly because it had a death in it that is really iconic to the franchise. I just sort of felt, I didn't really like how they killed that character off. It was like super quick, and it felt a little rushed, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because the actor wanted off the series. I love the reveal of the killers in this movie. The killer turning out to be Billy's mother, and the angle they go for, making her kind of a new-aged Mrs. Voorhees, is very interesting. Mickey, kind of a throwaway killer. Really, honestly, you're not surprised at the end that he turns out to be one of the killers. And they try to, one of the ongoing tropes with this series is that they always try to frame this person, or they're gonna blame this social thing. Honestly, I kind of can't wait. They're talking about releasing a Scream 5 in the very near future, once things get back to normal, kind of. And I can't wait to see what they use as one of the reasons, because with a lot of things going on with social media, they got a lot they could use, which I think will be very interesting. I also was very spoiled with this film because I was still in middle school at the time this came out, and the internet was brand new, basically, only in schools still. I mean, where it was available in every classroom, and I would always use any computer time I could get to go online, look at, anything I could find out about Scream 2. So I was a little pre-spoiled. I mean, I didn't know who the killer was. There was nothing concrete at the time, but I did tons of research. Scream 2 was also when I really began writing. I had came up with this idea for a script. Yeah, that's what kind of kicked off my writing career. Even though, I already loved telling stories. So number 2, Scream 4. Now, Scream 4 was very interesting in my opinion, due to the fact it brought us back from a break after a long absence of Scream in a new whole generation with almost an entirely new cast. And they brought back the main character who, throughout all the movies, it all is based around Neville Campbell's character, Sidney Prescott, and she returns home years and years after the first movie, and she's visiting with her family. They're going through some stuff, and of course, the murders start happening again. I sort of feel like they kind of forgot about 2 and 3 at this point, because they seem to mainly act as if she's done nothing since the first movie. It's kind of like they were trying to reboot it without actually making it a reboot, which I get is the whole spiel, because they actually do address that. Again, Scream is very good about addressing social or common tropes, be it in horror or just in the world today, which I really loved. And yeah, so you're going along for the ride and you don't know who the killer is, because again, what really honestly, in my opinion, makes it so good at not knowing who the killer is when you suddenly pop out a killer at the last minute saying, this person was the killer the whole time. Here's why. I feel like they always do give good reasons, and they do give good explanations on how this person is the killer, why this person is the killer. Like I said, Scream 3, it was Sidney's long-lost brother, who was basically turned away by his mom when he found her and wanted to be a part of her family, and she had given him up at birth. Scream 2, Mrs. Loomis just basically wanting revenge and getting some crazy person. I don't like the fact they said that there was a whole website of psychotic people that, like murderers.com or something. I forget what it was exactly. But in this one, it turns out to be, of course, this high school kid who's supposed to be like the new Randy throughout most of the movie. And they're talking about vlogging and social media a little bit and how they're going to record everything and make millions off becoming famous. The second killer, because aside from 3, there's usually always 2 killers. In fact, I have suspicions about Scream 5, which I'll get into. But Scream 4, the second killer, turns out to actually be Jill, Sidney's cousin. And basically because she wants to be the new Sidney. She wants to be the sole survivor. She wants all the attention and credit. Because with everything that's happened to Sidney, and Sidney making a book and everything and becoming rich and successful and famous through her tragedies, Jill feels like, well, she'll just always be in Sidney's shadow, which it's not like she's her sister. She's a cousin. She's got a different last name. So I like that fact. The fact that they got Emma Roberts to play Jill, as a big fan of American Horror Story, I felt she was a really good pick. But I sort of feel like now she is typecasted, and most of the time she always keeps playing these same similar roles, be it in American Horror Story or any other role she plays. So finally we get to number 1. And number 1 is, of course, Scream. As the first movie in the franchise, this is really good in my opinion. It was the first one where you had no idea who the killer was. They really psyched you out with the whole death. The killers turn out to be Sidney's boyfriend Billy and his best friend Stu. Stu is doing it just because basically Billy told him to. I think there's sort of a, attraction or something. Maybe they were trying to go for that and they didn't want to push it all the way. But I feel like he was definitely only doing it because Billy told him to. And he wanted to be Billy's best friend. Billy was doing it because basically he went off the deep end. Billy's mother left Billy's father because Billy's father was cheating on her with Mrs. Prescott, Sidney's mother. And that sort of got played on even more with Scream 3, where they said she was an actress in her younger days and she was very sexual in Hollywood. So she gave up the acting life to have a quiet life, changed her name, and got married and had Sidney. And then I guess she must have had an affair. The mother left. Billy grew up, blaming Sidney's mother for the family being torn apart. Interesting part I find about this, though, is if Mrs. Loomis cared enough about her son to go off the deep end and start killing people, then why the hell did she not fight for her son? They never really do explain that. Now, this would have been probably back in the late 80s, which at the time, women still mostly got custody of the children. Fathers didn't always get custody. I mean, it was rare if that happened. But they don't exactly say what Billy's father did. In fact, I think we only see him one time throughout the first movie. But anyway, so basically, before Scream actually started, after having an affair with Billy's father, she went on to have an affair with another person named Cotton Weary. And Billy did something to basically shift the blame of Sidney's mother's death on to Cotton Weary. And then we actually get into the movie, which happens a year after those events. So one of the big selling points I remember when this movie was coming out was the fact that Drew Barrymore was going to be in it. And I was a huge Drew Barrymore fan. And I just sort of felt cheated when she died 10 or 15 minutes into the movie. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Her name's all over the freaking posters and credits. She's dead? What? No. I used to joke around with friends and family. I was like, hey, let's watch Scream. We watched the first 10 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done. Bye. They're like, aren't you going to watch the rest of it? I'm like, nope, there's no more. The best character died. Of course, I was only joking, so I actually would sit and watch it, but I was just so shocked that they did that, and I'm like, that made no sense. Scream was brought to us by Wes Craven, who is very big in the horror community. The biggest thing he has probably ever done that people will always remember him for is starting the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So as I said before, they're talking about doing a new Scream, Scream 5, which I'm not going to say when it's supposed to come out because with everything going on at the time of this video, things are constantly being pushed back. We don't even know if movie theaters will stick around, which I'm sure they will. I just think there's going to be a lot less, like most people are saying. I really think that we're going to find a way that's going to connect to probably all of the movies if they're smart. If they're really smart and they really put their minds to it, I feel like this is everything we need. We need to connect all the movies together. Have some linking person. There's always been this theory that there might have been even a third killer from the first movie on. Now, we do learn in Scream 3 that there kind of was a third killer, that Sidney's brother, who was the movie producer, was actually recording the affair that Mr. Prescott was having with Sidney's mother. And that's what drove Billy's mother to do what she did. And that's also what drove Billy to do what he did. But, like I said, every movie has had two killers except Scream 3. So I feel like they need to pop in another killer that was there for those times. Another thing I honestly think will, because this is supposed to be the last. Of course, they always keep saying that, but they really need to do something that is either going to bring this to a final conclusion, which means they'll probably just take the easy route and they'll probably kill off Sidney. I think what we really need to see is Sidney become the killer. All this time, she has slowly been taken over by insanity. She can't get close to anyone, and just have her snap, go off the deep end, and start killing people. Why exactly yet, I'm not sure. I'm sure they will find some reason. They are very good at finding reasons as to why the person became the killer. But I feel like at this late in the game, Sidney's got to become the killer. Otherwise, it's gonna feel like another repeat movie. So, that's my thoughts for Scream 5. That's the things I'd like to see come. If we'll get it, who knows. But, yeah. So anyways, I want to thank you all for watching. Before I go, I'd just like to say we have finally reached 20 subscribers. Yay! So, if you do not have this movie, I'm giving away another free code. Be sure to get your copy of this movie. Remember, this is first come, first serve. If you missed out, like I said before, every time I reach another 10 subscribers, I will put another code in that next video. There is currently only a couple days left to get your free ebooks. Today is the last day for The Witch's Hole, and The Legal Murderer is until Monday. So, if you want a free ebook, get your copy now. I want to thank everyone for watching, and happy Halloween.